Okay, yay. We're on the internet. We've made it in safely. So that's good news. All right. Welcome, everybody, to today's Eat and Greet. And hopefully, in the next hour, we're going to give you something that was worth the time you took to show up. So I'm really glad to see everybody. And it's a busy day. We've got 2 Eat and Greets today, and they're both fabulous. And like on the astrology spectrum, they couldn't be further from each other in terms of topics. So it's going to be a good, busy day. So, Julio, we're together on the internet.
We are together. It's so great to be here, Stormie. Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is
Yes,
exciting.
it is exciting, right? Because we hang out together in AFAN, which is so interesting in and of itself, since it's my like first round being in there. But now this is a completely different setting.
Yeah,
So this
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you guys, today we're going to talk and we're going to take a dip into the concepts of esoteric astrology, which is, from what I have found and studied and sat with and been exposed to, it is just a real different kind of energy. The idea that the soul comes in a little bit at a time, that is so manageable, I think, to work with and to kind of understand as we're going through different phases of our development. How come I didn't get it all then? Or how come I wasn't prepared for that then? I didn't even have the breadth of knowledge of that then. So it's a really neat kind of concept. And we see a lot of those changes through Saturn interactions, Saturn squares, Saturn returns, and things like that. So we're going to be taking on a little exploration of that today with visuals, we decided in the end. So, Julio, I'm going to just ask you a couple of quick questions and then let you take us on this journey. But one of the things that we're always curious about is how you got started. How did you get into astrology?
Well, I was always fascinated with really big questions. So big questions, and I thought I wanted to be a scientist and work as a nuclear physicist, or work in in astrophysics, that kind of thing. But I was also a very artistic kid, and so it was a long progression. But I got introduced to astrology by my grandmother, who had Dell Horoscope, the Dell Horoscope magazine that was published for like, I think Dell was published for like 40 years. Ronnie Grisham was the editor of it for that whole time. And so she introduced me to astrology. And then later on in life, when these really big questions kept persisting, kind of annoyingly, like, what's it all for? How does spirit work? Um, what are the big questions of the meaning of life? Those kinds of questions. Astrology came in and helped kind of fill in those gaps, and for me, what appeared like a great clockwork.
Mm.
And you could, if you believe in a higher power, or God, you might, that's one side of the coin. But then there's a very strong kind of atheistic bent in the 20th century as well. But that didn't work for me. Sort of a kind of uh, uh, the sense that everything is meaningless didn't work for me. And so instead, my really way of perceiving life was helped by astrology, in the sense that everything has meaning. And you can see through the planets and the movement of the planets that every moment is precious, every moment has meaning. And then applying that to human beings in chart readings is so meaningful. So that's how I got to it.
Yeah. And how long have you been practicing now, like officially in
Oh
professional
gosh,
practice?
about as a professional, about 4 years. Yeah. I went to my first astrology conference in 2016. I went to the NORWAC astrological conference, the Northwest Astrological Conference, and that was kind of like an amazing life transforming experience for me. It was there that I met, a number of professional astrologers, and got feedback from them, that they essentially said, "You need to pursue this." And so it had a profound impact on me. And I decided to listen to them. I decided not to ignore what they had to say.
Mm.
And in a previous, previous instances of my life, I may have, sort of like dismissed the feedback that the world was giving. But this time I decided, no, you know what, I'm going to listen to this and follow this passion. And it was also kind of burning inside of me at the same time. And and it's been remarkable, a remarkable journey. It kind of swept through my life, and and then I was able to speak at NORWAC in 2019 and again at 2020 in 2020, and so it's been quite a ride, into astrology.
Sure. Well, and I mean, to lead the way, you've got just the coolest name ever. That right. Giulio Pellegrini? Really? That's fabulous. I'm like, is he already famous? Because that's wonderful.
Well, for bottled water, maybe. I'm famous for my giant glass of water.
I love it though. I just think it's absolutely beautiful. So I love
Thank
how
you.
you talk about how, in terms of like faith in your perception of life, astrology was able to kind of be that usher in between to help you find, what your conception is of what's out there. Cause I can definitely relate. And I think that that happened very early on for me without me really understanding that. But as it sits today, it's the one thing that I think I can really count on, like you said, like clockwork, to say, oh, wait a minute, I'm right on time, actually. Or to look at the timing of what's happening and say, okay, well, wait a minute, in here, I think I should be grasping this. It's almost one of the greatest helpers to me of faith, truly, to say, okay, I'm on time. It's okay to learn these lessons and be right where I'm at, you know?
So truly, it's so beautiful for that. It's as if, once you learn to read the chart, it's as if you have a kind of like a handbook for life. You have a map, not only for your birth chart, but how to proceed after your birth. How, what are my marching orders right now? And how can I align myself with life to, maximize my life, to learn the lessons that I need to learn. And I mean, it's just extraordinary how astrology provides that.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So now I'm going to need to also just practice esoteric astrology too. I'm going to need to do it all, is basically it, because it's all wonderful. We've been exposed to a lot
Great.
of good branches here for sure.
Mm.
Yeah. All right. Should we jump in? I cannot wait to see what you
Well, I mean,
have to share. Go ahead.
oh, sure thing. Okay, I'll share my screen. Let's see
Okay.
here.
And I love it because today I brought Asian food since I am studying Korean and today is a study day for me. I brought Asian food and Julio's like, I have pickles. I was like, okay, I've literally never had anybody bring pickles. So that's brilliant.
That is awesome. That is so great. I'm snacking on pickles today. So the proof is right here.
Yay, what are you guys eating
Um,
out there? Okay, it's all you.
all right. Okay. Well, so when we talk about esoteric astrology, you know, I'm that it sounds maybe left field, but really what it is, it's an investigation of the invisible, of the aspects of life that we can't really get our hands around very easily, that aren't tangible, that aren't touchable. Um, and I love this quote by Rudolf Steiner that really points to the value of looking at the that spiritual side of life, the invisible aspects of life. If you only know the laws of ordinary life, then you only know a small part of life. The major portion lies in those things hidden in life, that is, hidden from the ordinary senses. People will soon recognize that to live better, they must study the hidden worlds, since the materialistic approach leads to a crisis in nearly every area. And so Rudolf Steiner has been a big influence on my thinking. He was an esoteric philosopher and writer and scholar who wrote in the early part of the 20th century, in the 1910s. He founded Waldorf education and the Waldorf school system. So, you might know of Waldorf schools. Waldorf education. I believe Waldorf is a K through 12 educational system that has a really interesting pedagogy. It has, they break their training or their teaching down into 7-year increments. So that's something to just hold in your mind while we're going through this. Is the number 7 will be very important. But Waldorf breaks their teaching methods down into 7 years. From like when you enter school until 7 is a period of time with a specific kind of curriculum, and then from 7 to 14 is another specific kind of curriculum, and then from 7 to 20 from 14 to 21 is an entirely different kind of curriculum. And so just hold that while we're talking about it. The other aspect of esoteric astrology is really that esoteric astrology relates to the soul. So if we think about the most invisible part of us, the most sort of ineffable, difficult to describe, mysterious aspect of being human is the human soul. And so esoteric astrology is really concerned with that, the psyche, the soul, and building a relationship to that invisible field within us, an awareness of that invisible field. And so that's simply it. It's just building a relationship to the invisible forces within us and without us, inside and outside. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you can hear that and not think, yeah, absolutely. But maybe that's, just a testament to where I'm at, that's the way that all of this comes to me, is that it is very soul based and we're watching the soul map happen. But that, just even hearing the way that you've explained it and brought it, that's so beautiful, because I'm just like, yeah.
There's like that deep resonance of knowing that comes from an irrational place when you start talking about the soul. And in our time, in the late or the early 21st century, we've really kind of learned to shut off the rational, or shut off the irrational portions of ourselves, and to not listen to the creative aspects of ourselves that might be the soul speaking to us. All right, I won't go down that tangent too much, but so this age 7 is so interesting. So, or the number 7, and so Rudolf Steiner, the originator of Waldorf education, believed that children should learn in 7-year increments, because that age 7 represented a new birth. And what we know about the cycle of Saturn is that Saturn forms its first square in the birth chart at around age 7. It's not exactly, but it's around age 7. And that this coincides, and Steiner mentions this, that when a child's teeth come in at around age 7, that's when that teacher should change the curriculum to be more difficult, to start with more math, more reading, more intense, crystallized learning, more high-level conceptual learning. It's right around age 7 when the teeth come in, he writes. Now, he didn't mention the Saturn square, but he was aware of astrology. So I have to think that this is related to the first Saturn square, and that we know that bones and teeth are ruled by Saturn. And so this first Saturn square at age 7 seems to me that it's a confrontation with Saturn, and it's some critical moment that we are meeting our destiny for the first time. And so I just wanted to introduce that right now, just to think about it, and to have everybody think about who they were when they were 7. That's something that is really precious to us all. When you were a child, maybe you went through some difficult times when you were a child, and those are parts of your story to perhaps just investigate, to look at the imagery of who you were then, and to see what's there, because there's potentially a lot of gold there to bring forward into your life.
Sure. I think about
Yeah.
that in I think about being 7 and I was in Mrs. Siegel's class. And that was literally the question we're starting with there. And like, between that year of like ending first grade and beginning second grade and hearing, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's like, well, okay, I should probably figure that out today.
Well, isn't that interesting? That's so right on, Stormy. It's around age 7 uh, when our self-identity becomes crystallized, when the when a there's a voice inside that starts speaking to you, and it's the development of self.
Mhm.
And you start to wonder, what do I want to be when I grow up? It's right around then, right around age 7. Who do I want to be? What do I want to be? We're sort of confronted with this question of vocation really early. I mean, it's so early. You're 7 years old, and people are already asking you what you want to be when you grow up, and the mind begins to objectify or externalize that question. Suddenly, you have thoughts, and you can tell you're having thoughts at around age 7. And
Yeah.
before that, the energetic field is really part of the body. The mental and body are pretty much fused together. And so you are having a completely subjective experience, as a toddler. Your experience is completely subjective. But with that first Saturn square, it's the birth of objectivity. So, so it's the birth of something quite extraordinary in human beings.
Sure. And it's your first real, I think, influence of Saturn coming in to say, let's organize all of this, all of you. Let's organize all of the you and get it into something achievable. And sometimes I think obviously what that looks like in my example is I walked into school. I walked into a structure. I walked into something very Saturnian. But even in that, it starts to form all of the what do you want to be into you're gathered. You become gathered, I think.
Mm. Oh, I love that. Yes, gathered. Yes, gathered together.
Yeah.
Well, that's so true. It's around age 7 when you're meeting your social, it's the very beginning of your social obligations, going to school and learning. In Waldorf education, they don't start in Waldorf education. Excuse me. In Waldorf education, until around age 7, Steiner believed that children should play a lot, be exposed to a lot of art and music, and 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 allow the body to kind of grow in competence.
Mm.
And it's only after the coming in of the second set of teeth that you would begin to introduce more mental pursuits. And he really thought that introducing mental pursuits too early would kind of harm a child, which is
Sure.
kind of, it's different than how we treat children today, where we kind of ask them to grow up as fast as possible, and we want our children to be. We might start education really early, but in Waldorf educations, they hold off on that, and it's a bit controversial.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Let's see. So we're kind of building towards this. Let's see here. The other piece of this puzzle is we've been talking about a square. So I really want to kind of define what is a square. The square aspect has a lot of meaning embedded in it. So we've kind of talked about Saturn. We've talked about age 7. Saturn as a Saturn as that age 7, that confrontation with Saturn. You're meeting Saturn for the first time, and imagine like walking into a room with Saturn and how impactful that would be. Like if you embodied Saturn as a human being or as a person, and if you met Saturn for the first time and what that would be like. I mean, kind of, scary maybe, or withering.
Yeah. It's how I feel every
uh,
time I sit with Stephen Forrest. I'm like, oh my God, I got to be an adult right now because this is like Saturn.
yes, yes. But maybe not to a child. We don't know we don't know the vision that children that children are having, that how children see the world seems to be with so much wonder and awe. So maybe when children are confronted with Saturn for the first time, um, and it's a metaphor for meeting the world. It's a metaphor for school, for social um, instruction. But anyway, back to the square. So squares, what is this, the square aspect, 90 degrees? It's really a crisis of action. So squares demand a response. Squares put up kind of roadblocks in the way that force a response. They move the story forward. Squares tend to manifest results. So if you're looking to create, results in your life, you might wait till, not wait, but know that when that square is coming along, that's when you'll be really digging in and doing the hard work. That's when you'll really be getting it done. Um, and you can follow the cycle of the moon, and like clockwork, every square of the, from every sort of quarter moon, you'll if you start following that and noticing, you'll notice that the action takes place then. That there's some minor crisis in your life, that there's something happens. And what the squares demand is imagination. So like to get through a square, squares demand that we think, that we begin to problem solve and use our human faculties for imagination to get to turn a crisis into an opportunity. So okay, so let's move forward with these ideas all kind of stacked up together.
Ooh, good pictures.
Well, so what this is really showing is that Saturn is the beginning. Saturn is the dividing line between the visible world and the invisible world. So Saturn represents visible reality, what we can feel and see and touch. And the outer planets, so Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, they really begin to describe those invisible realms that we can't really get at, the invisible realms that are difficult for us to apprehend with our eyes. But we know they're there, but we just can't kind of see them from our rational viewpoint. And so like Uranus would be, say consciousness, just really distilling it down and kind of being very simple about it. But Uranus, the breakthrough in consciousness, Neptune, imagination, and Pluto, the most mysterious, kind of a representation of the soul. And Saturn being kind of the gateway. I like to say that Saturn only rules time and space, but everything else is up for grabs. And so Saturn rules two signs: Capricorn, which is this very tangible, results-driven sign, and Aquarius, the final air sign, the last air sign that we have, pointing the way towards the invisible. So Saturn, on the one hand, rules the most dense, Capricorn, the last Earth sign, the most dense Earth sign, the most achieving Earth sign. And on the other hand, Aquarius, the lightest of the air signs, the most ethereal, and Aquarius, the imagery of the water bearer kind of linked to consciousness, the lightness of human consciousness. And so it's got Saturn ruling these dual aspects of body and soul.
Mm. Yeah, I always laugh like when I'm teaching classes and we talk about the difference between Saturn ruling Capricorn and how he shows up in Aquarius. And it's like in Capricorn, he buys the land and builds something very material on it. And then he goes up to the rooftop when it gets into Aquarius and says, well, what am I going to do with the rest of that space out there?
Oh, yeah. Yes. Space. Yeah. Space.
Mm.
It's interesting that space. The humans need space. Humans need room to grow. That's an interesting line to follow with Aquarius being linked to scientific discoveries and space exploration, and the need for human beings to kind of explore our territory, to have enough room. I think Sagittarius would appreciate that too, but maybe that's a little bit of an unexplored area with Aquarius.
Yeah. I think so. And
Yeah.
even if, the vision even here in your Aquarian picture, which is fabulous, of, leaving just my Capricornian physical body to explore that big spirit that's out there. It's very vast and beyond our fingertips typically. So to even be able to be Saturnianly gathered in the ethers, I think is a neat idea that there's work to do in that sphere as well as the material. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm.
Okay, marching forward. Let's see. So, all right. So, time is a big part of what we're talking about. There's a birth moment. Remember, we're talking about the first Saturn square at around age 7, and so we have to start with the birth, and the birth is a crisis moment. A birth is a kind of a combination of the archetypes of Mars and Saturn. You have you have a breach and the birth of something new. Um, And so I'll move through this. We're kind of, you know, dancing all over here in a kind of Piscean way, but we've talked about, I have Neptune on the ascendant, so it's like, okay, the line is never straight. Um, we've talked a little bit about Saturn's dual nature of existence, and how Capricorn rules visible reality, and then Saturn through the Aquarian archetype is the beginning of those invisible realms, um, and that the move from Capricorn to Aquarius is kind of a breakdown of is a the Capricorn a breakdown leading to a breakthrough in consciousness. So that Saturn and Capricorn represent this crisis of consciousness, and then the breakthrough in Aquarius. Okay. Um,
Yeah, just so
so
you
let's.
know, you have some Piscean support out there. They're
Oh,
laughing.
really?
They're
Oh,
like, "Yeah, we're on the journey. It's fine."
oh, good. I appreciate it. Thank you all for hanging in. Hanging in. I promise we'll get there. Um, Okay, so the first Saturn square at age 7, Rudolf Steiner believed that this completed the ensoulment process. So, so in a sense, you're born, but the soul is not fully attached. This is a really interesting idea that the soul is descends from, from the heavens over time into the body. As the body matures and becomes a vessel that is capable of holding the full power of the soul, and that this is a process that happens over time, and that at around age 7, when the teeth come in and the first Saturn square happens, that there is an energetic sheath called the etheric sheath that then falls away and gives birth to the etheric body, which is like the vital body. So in like pramana yoga, in yogic Vedantic philosophy, you've got this idea, thousands of years old, that the body has another body that's the energy body that radiates from the inside out, that it kind of is all about us. Um, and so Rudolf Steiner believed that age 7 was the birth of the etheric body, the birth of this new energy body, and that at that moment the soul completes its ensoulment process. And so now you're fully embodied. The young child is able to carry the soul forward on its mission. And at this time, it's also it's the growth of our psychological complexes. We might run into issues when we're children. Um, we've already said that's when the question of who do you want to be when you grow up comes in, and so we can see already that this first Saturn square is a massive. I don't think you can underestimate its importance in terms of its importance in vocation, in calling, and in ultimately in self-individuation, in who we end up becoming. This first Saturn square is a powerful omen for that.
Yeah, we have someone in the comments who said that she went through a trauma when she was 7, and that turned her into wanting to be a healer now.
Mm.
Yeah. Mm.
Yes, yes. Well, and as we go through, I hope to give you a way. So actually, let's just talk about it now. So where we're leading towards is we're going to look at charts for the first Saturn square and we're going to see that those are really powerful omens. When you match up the birth chart to the exact first Saturn square, that can really show where to aim in life, kind of your a possible direction, and see how that first Saturn square chart could really powerfully show vocation and calling.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about this too in terms of the psychological process. I think when you're 7, you stop having naps in school. What?
Right, right. Yeah, you're kind of taken out of dream world.
Yeah, they're like psychological process. You have to be awake at 2 p.m. on a Monday.
Yes, yes, yeah. Um, I know, what a bummer. Naps go away.
Yeah, a little bit of a letdown, but that's okay. And then you build your own business and build in a siesta.
There you go. There you go. Stormie, I'm just curious. Like, did you have images of who you wanted to be when you were around 7? Like, did
I did. Yep, I had some pretty strong ones, and I had some pretty strong spiritual experiences that let me know that more than what I wanted to be, kind of also what I was. That my clairs worked very, very well, and that was always going to be a piece of me. I can really remember in second grade making a poor choice and feeling the choice beyond the space of my consciousness, feeling it in something else that was like, this is not a good decision. And then having it hit my consciousness. And so knowing that I was always going to be whatever I did, working in the space where tending to the spirit would be first. So, and that's pretty young, but right around there, as well as when my mom took me to my first metaphysical fair, and I loved it and I loved the vibration of it. And I didn't quite resonate with everybody, but in astrology, I just understood what she was doing. And to me, it wasn't this like white light moment of, oh, I'm going to definitely be an astrologer. It just was like, I get this, I understand it. And instead, it felt like a call back to it. And so I didn't think too hard about it. I just engaged it in my life growing up from there. But the other thing I became really aware of is that I was always going to talk. I was going to be a talker. I was like, well, this seems to be a thing I'm going to do. And that has proven correct.
Oh, that's amazing. It's really incredible how much you knew
Yeah.
about yourself.
quickly
Yeah.
quickly I have that is one thing, which as amazing as that sounds, it's not like I knew it then, so I just pursued astrology and all of these things. I just let the world be what it was, and I had plenty of kind of off course moments that in the end brought me back to astrology and things that happen in sets of 12. Apparently that's my number. But it was a knowing. It was just a knowing, and that has guided me since. So, yeah.
Hmm. Beautiful. That's beautiful. Um, I'm curious if people are chatting about, who they were when they were 7, or,
Yeah.
or images of what they wanted to be.
Yeah. So, one
How it
person
goes.
has shared that
It's just
actually,
such a fun. It's just something really fun and deeply spiritual to engage with.
yeah,
Um,
I think that it is. And somebody was sharing down here that when they were 7, they knew they wanted to be a wizard of some kind. And someone else had an experience when they were 7 that their house burned down. So, brought that immediate embodiment of
mm,
my life is different in. Mm,
yes. Yeah. I wanted to be a magician, and I still, to this day, I just treasure the magician tarot card. It
mhm.
just deeply speaks to me. The idea of human creativity and being a channel for, you know divine inspiration. It's
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Um, I want to make sure. Let's see here. I think we've set this up pretty good. So we're thinking about age 7, the first Saturn square. Um, it's the etheric body. It's the birth of this new mental, emotional, spiritual being. So it's the birth of our sense of who we're becoming, our sense of possibility, and all of these things circle back to Saturn. So reinform us of the meaning of Saturn. So when we think of Saturn as the if we only think of Saturn as the taskmaster or as drudgery or as something that's there to put us down, we're not really paying attention to the full. I think we need to give, pay more attention to the full palette that Saturn offers, which is what we've been describing. The sense of possibility.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is just some more about the physical stages, or the stages of birth, but I want to get into a chart so you can really see what this looks like, and then we might bounce back. So, okay, let's see how this plays out in a chart. We've got Aretha Franklin, known as the Queen of Soul, and she is the most charted female artist in history, enormously talented, one of the most famous artists of the 20th century, known by everyone on the planet practically. Awarded a National Medal of the Arts, incredibly talented and powerful individual. And this is her birth chart, Saturn in Taurus. So Saturn in Taurus. And what I was looking for is I want to see the world's greatest singer that has ever lived. That kind of a chart, and someone who took that up with power and grace and dignity. And when I looked at, so let's skip forward. So now I want to bring in the first Saturn square. And so you know how to do it. So if you're doing this yourself with your own charts, that you know how to do it. So you want to find the exact Saturn square, and you can do this in Solar Fire, or not in Solar Fire. If you're using Astro Gold, you can do it with the aspect search function, and it will get it right down to the arc minute. And we want it right to the arc minute. And so what we can see is that for Aretha Franklin, her etheric body Saturn, her etheric Saturn is at 24 degrees of Leo. So from Taurus to Leo. And then, okay. Then when we put these two charts together, we can have a look at this now. So now what this is, it's a transit chart, but we're thinking of it in a different way. It's a transit chart that we're saying has a different meaning. It's the meaning of a second birth. It's the birth of what we've been talking about, our sense of self, identity. It's it's the images of who we wanted to become when we're 7 years old. And I'm thinking about Aretha Franklin at around 7 years old and wondering what her images were and who was she imagining herself to be. And we can use this tool here to kind of say, wow, look at this. The Queen of Soul. We've got Pluto there. And we've already said that Pluto rules the soul. And communication, Mercury, and the sun right at the top of the chart. And the sun is a signifier of kings and queens and royalty. And certainly Aretha Franklin was, at the very upper echelon of artistic royalty. And her Saturn there, and I see this as a very powerful indicator of her calling and her vocation. She had this in her birth chart. She has the sun in Aries in the 6th house. So we know that we know her biography. So we know that she was dedicated to her craft and a very hard worker. So
I'm just looking at this quote you put up. Oh, sorry. I'm just looking at this quote you put up by Obama, and I'm thinking about even here at 7 with that Saturn, or with that Pluto and Mercury, how he's saying like we could feel our history, the pain, the darkness, like literally the depth of voice with Mercury and Pluto there together. And this is at 7. Wow.
Oh, yeah, that is so true. Actually, I didn't put that together, or I've forgotten it. That is so true with Mercury there, the voice, and the darkness and light.
Mm.
The sun on one side, Pluto on the other. Powerful, powerful. So if this can give us a view into vocation, amazing. And a view into who we might become if we follow a certain path. And so what the question becomes then is, what does etheric Saturn, what's the relationship between etheric Saturn and birth chart Saturn? Because it's like, well, am I not supposed to, you have lots of questions. This brings up lots and lots of questions. I don't have the answer to all of them. But a question could come up, you could say, well, am I supposed to follow, Saturn in Leo, or am I supposed to do my Saturn in Taurus? And the answer is you do your Saturn in Taurus, but you're aiming somewhere. And etheric Saturn gives you somewhere to aim. And I can show you that on the next slide and how that kind of works out. So let's say you have Saturn in Taurus. You're aiming at self-worth, right? I mean, that's Saturn in Taurus is a development of and knowing deeply that you're valuable and that you have skills and talents and that you're just innately worthy. And that's usually a challenge. If you have Saturn in Taurus, that's your work. Your work is to know at the deepest level your innate self-worth. Well, that's something that Leo has. Leo's conquered that. And so you're aiming at Leo, and it gives you a model. It gives you something to strive for that is so defined and definite. And that's what the etheric Saturn's doing. The etheric body chart is our imagining that's calling forth something. It's calling forth our highest aspiration. It's an ideal to strive for. Mm-hmm. And it's these two, and it harkens back to this idea of body and spirit, that we're in a kind of flawed body that decays and dies, but that our spirit is pure. Our spirit is something that can be perfected. The body can't really be perfected. Maybe when you're in your 20s and you hit the gym. But eventually the body stops being perfectible, but the spirit never does. Spirit is something we can always aim for. And so natal Saturn and etheric body Saturn give us a map that we can, a map we can traverse for the kind of the perfection of spirit. And here's should we go through some other pairs?
Yes, I'm like loving this right now because I have Saturn in Libra, so I'm like, yes,
Capricorn.
Okay. Yeah, I just recently come out of a square, so.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, Saturn in Libra. What are the concerns of Saturn in Libra? Maybe the development of an aesthetic, but on a deeper level, equity, equality, fair play, relationship, being in a relationship, and that takes hard work. It takes ambition. It takes it takes the grit, and all of these Capricornian qualities. If Libra had it, problem solved.
Mm-hmm.
And right?
Yeah, I know. I laugh all the time. I'm like, Saturn and Libra folks, we have to stay. You cannot be a runner. You got to just stay and do the work.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, beautiful. Thank you for that. I mean, that's commitment. That's what Capricorn has, is that unflagging commitment. Oh, we should chat about this.
Yes.
Yeah, beautiful. Let's try another one. How about let's say Aquarius, because that's a mysterious one. And I thought for a while on this, like, what does Aquarius have to learn from Taurus? I couldn't figure it out. And
to be in their body immediately is what came to me, is to actually be in the body.
Mm,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, but what did you
Embodiment.
come up with?
Well, what I came up with was what Taurus knows is about the sanctity of human life. Taurus knows very deeply that the earth and everything connected to it is valuable. And and that Aquarian sort of equanimity and that Aquarian knowing that we should strive for fair play, that we're a human family, that where does the idea of a human family come from? It has to come from the idea that there is a divine spark in all of us, in the in the sort of the truth of the sanctity of human life, and that's something Taurus has. Taurus comes in with that. A Taurus sun, for instance, or just the pure archetype of Taurus is coming in with a great sense of knowledge about the depth of the beauty of human life.
Go Taurus.
So, yes, yes, go Taurus. Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of other things that we could think about that Taurus could teach Aquarius, but it gives us, again, something to aim for. So I like to say you're doing, I don't know why, but you're doing your Saturn. But you're aiming towards an ideal, and that ideal can be Taurus, and that empowers you. That empowers your natal Saturn to take up the mantle, and it gives you something to strive for. And I almost think that when you have that ideal to shoot for, then you're not maybe as down and out about your natal Saturn. Like I have Saturn in, let's see here, I have Saturn in Gemini, and I can kind of get down and out about my Saturn in Gemini. But when I move towards Virgo, I'm like, oh, okay. So Virgo is a sense of order and a sense of orderliness and categorization. And so when I break things down into their functional units, then I'm able to do my Gemini thing, which is like tell a story or relay the facts and that sort of thing. So aiming at Virgo gives me something really clear, a clear way to do my Saturn in Gemini.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice because I almost have this vision of, by the time we have this first and every other square that we come into with Saturn, is this idea that Saturn as that taskmaster is actually coming around to spiritually mature us and take us to the next level through that spiritual maturation, because that will be permanent. Right? You can't lose that. And so having an aim with it, if you can know about these pairs, then you do get that guidance where it's like, oh, okay, I'm struggling so much with my Saturn in Libra because I'm not really doing the work, or I'm not allowing myself to push into that ambition, which the square demands it anyways. So you, in my experience, so then being able to kind of see this other side as that guide, I think is really beautiful. And anything that allows us to give ourselves grace to grow and be where we're at, but also do the work, are principles I'm real in love with.
Hmm. Oh, that's, yes, yeah. Grace, yes, grace and ease, because I think a lot of us can look at our Saturn and feel like we have to do it by beating ourselves over the head and being really harsh. Or at least I do. I have my chart rulers in Capricorn, and so I've got this, like, the committee is up there, the governing committee. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, now you shall be judged. Um,
You're like, it's only breakfast. I cannot be judged at breakfast.
oh boy. Um, so here's another example. Say Virgo to Sagittarius. If your birth Saturn is in Virgo, it's the call to orderliness and organization, getting your act together, that kind of thing. But that requires faith. That requires that, if you, not only that, but let's take something even deeper, like that Virgo sense of service to humanity, that really make a difference through an act of service. Well, how is that going to happen unless it's powered by a deep belief in something, a deep faith? And that's something that Sagittarius has, is faith, belief, you know, a ideological framework that's powering the whole thing. Without that, Virgo collapses into self-pity and martyrdom and, you know, recriminations and that kind of thing. But if the base is strong, if Virgo comes in with their philosophy intact, and they're just really coming from that deep commitment, but it's not just the commitment that Virgo has is powered through faith, powered by belief.
Yeah. And understanding that, like, it's okay when it doesn't go according to plan, i.e., your plan, because it is the plan and it's all on time. And the other thing I see when I see this square typically too is because Saturn and Virgo, I teach Virgo as the natural healer of our zodiac. And so with Saturn here, sometimes what I find is that people want to heal or want to help or want to serve, and they feel like they can't. And they come into this square and are thrown into moments where they have to teach, where they have to become that profiting Sagittarius. And they've got to share either what's been happening to them, or they're teaching an actual subject, you know, which takes them out of that I'll just be over here doing my plan, doing it my way, looking nice and tidy. And sometimes it's like, no, it's a mess in public.
Yeah. So that reminds me of that Virgo could learn to lighten up a little bit, and like Sagittarius, to play, to have some fun, to kind of brush it off. So
yeah, and thank goodness the squares happen between similar qualities, right? I just laugh at the idea of like Aquarius trying to tell Virgo to like chill out.
ooh, yeah. No.
Similar qualities. It's like, okay, at least I get how you kind of do things. I'm willing to follow your thought process.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's a, yes. Ooh, that made me shudder. So, and let's do Cancer, Libra. So Cancer will tend to see the world in hierarchical terms. Mother, father. Everyone's either mother, father, or even more hierarchical, parent-child relationships. Everywhere you look, it's mom or dad or parent or child. And in Libra, we learn to have relationships that are more flat, horizontal relationships, peers, and develop some objectivity. And this is, really important for Cancer in terms of Cancer's ability to relate. Cancer is a very strong sign of relate. It's the first relationship sign, forming really strong bonds. And but Cancer would do really well to learn some of the the lighter side of Libra.
Yeah. I just laugh because Cancer, I just envision our Cancerian friends just taking it all so serious. And Libra's like, oh, if you're going to do people, you have to chill out. Like, it is just not always that serious.
Right. Yes.
It's okay.
Yes.
Go with the flow, Cancer.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had some questions about if your natal Saturn is in Scorpio. Is that it, you guys? I think it's natal Saturn in Scorpio. How does, yeah. Oh, Scorpio to Aquarius. How do they learn from each other? Especially, it says if it's already a strong theme of power with Scorpio, how do you embody the lessons that come with Aquarius if you've been in the position of oppression for quite some time?
Okay. If you've been in the position of being oppressed or the oppressor, I wonder. That's
being oppressed.
Being oppressed. Okay. Okay. Well, Scorpio, yeah, this is a deep one. I mean, Scorpio is a pretty mysterious sign. So we're dealing with death, transformation, endings, and the release of Scorpio is a release and a elimination. Really, it's the elimination of toxins.
Mhm.
Um, and in Scorpio, we're concerned with power. The accumulation of power. Um, there can be a bit of a sense of hoarding, and in Aquarius, you know, I see it as the learning the fair distribution and use of power. Um, and uh, and yeah, this one is probably the most mysterious, but
Mm.
fair distribution, the fair, the a sense of bringing light to the shadow, or bringing air to the areas of our consciousness. So Scorpio can be quite locked in and kind of turn in on itself in a discursive way in its thinking. Scorpios can become obsessed, can become the energy becomes quite compressed, and in Aquarius we are lightening up a great deal, and there is more contact and more touch with consciousness. So it's a kind of a brightening and a release of consciousness.
Mhm.
Um, so here's another way to think of it, and I'm kind of riffing here. Is if you think of the water bear is just generously pouring out consciousness. And in Scorpio, we tend to be restricted, to pull in tightly. But Aquarius is not like that. Aquarius is quite generous and is about the bounty of humanity, the bounty of human consciousness. Um, what would you say, Stormie? Do you have any sort
Yeah.
of
Well, I was thinking along the same lines, and I was thinking at just a very deep drama, trauma, dark, got to get to the light kind of place, where because Scorpio does hold in so tight, especially in the position of the oppressed, that can compact into resentment and continued poisonous ingestment. Whereas once that square comes and hits, it's almost this opportunity to give life, to breathe even new thought air into what happened, to be able to release and untangle the resentment. And it's interesting because in our bodies, I think when things happen, when traumas or events happen, we hold on to it. But in that interaction with Aquarius, we literally jump to the mind to heal the body, I think. And that is the fairest distribution of power, because if I cannot get it out of my body on my own, I've got to use another source that can also be just as powerful to clear that space. So literally that transformation of energy in there. And one of the things that I think we do just in general with resentment that stays down there, or anything that's not cleaned out and the toxin isn't cleaned out, is that even if I'm not unkind to other people, if I'm just still holding it, it is just still poison, right?
mm,
So I was thinking a little bit about that everybody in that fair distribution of power, in every situation and scenario in my life, I have a part, even if my part is just that I am continuing to hold into it. And maybe I've got to, do the counseling, do the whatever, to try to Aquarian that out of my space for freedom. Fair
mm,
distribution of power.
mm,
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Hmm. That's a good one. That's really a good one. I mean, they're all good, but to sit with that, I think is deep, like you said.
yeah, yeah. Objectivity as well. Scorpio can get very, very subjective in a way that isn't helpful. And Aquarius is able to kind of take a 30,000-foot view of things.
Hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah, almost
yeah,
like
and
you
for
hover. Aquarius hovers. It's like, hey, okay, we're going to take a helicopter above this traumatic situation or belief that you have and see it from up here. And typically, I always talk about the stadium, right? You get these seats that are like right on the field where you can see their sweat, and it's really great because you can see sweat, but that doesn't really help you see the whole game. You got to really get in the nosebleeds of your life if you're going to have any higher conscious perspective of the fact that humans really are humans, and we're going to make a lot of mistakes and do a lot of good as well, but everybody can have peace.
mm, mm, yes,
Nosebleed seats.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
great metaphor. Yes. Great metaphor. I love that.
Yeah, thanks. And I really don't, I
Let's
don't go
see.
to
I'm not
stadium
sure.
sports.
Yeah, neither do
Okay.
I. So let's see. Where do we want to go now? Um, this this from Jung is from Carl Jung is kind of points back to this idea that we have that there's a law in place that we have to follow, that we must follow this internal voice that develops around age 7 at the first Saturn square. It's vocation acts like a law of God from which there is no escape. The fact that many a man who would go his own way ends in ruin means nothing to one who has a vocation. He must obey his own law as if it were a daimon, whispering to him of new and wonderful paths. Anyone with a vocation hears the voice of the inner man, and he is called. That is why the legends say that he possesses a private daemon who counsels him and whose mandates he must obey. Um, so, and apologies for Jung's antiquated language and lack of pronouns, but well, it's not very inclusive, but still, I think that he makes a good point about that the inner voice that develops and and how powerful it is. And James Hillman comes around, decades later, and has kind of reinforces this idea again, and says, "I want us to envision that what children go through has to do with finding a place in the world for their specific calling. They're trying to live two lives at once: the one they were born with, let's say the first Saturn square, and the one they were born into, maybe etheric Saturn. The entire image of a destiny is packed into a tiny acorn, the seeds of a huge oak on small shoulders, and its rings call loud and persistent, and is as demanding as any scolding voice from the surroundings." So this is the idea that yes, environment and DNA and how you were raised and what your parents did or didn't do has an impact on you. But regardless of any of that, there's something that's unique and fundamental about you that's seeking to shine forth and to be born, and that you disregard that at your own peril. That voice that if disregarded is I this is he didn't say this, but I'm adding this, that it's really an imperative that you develop the capacity to listen to your inner voice and act on it in accordance with it, because it's a kind of divine law. It's aiming you in a direction that is good and beneficial.
Yeah. Well, and if we're talking the realm of the spirit and the esoteric body as these things come out, it is so great to go put my hands out and help someone, build something. But it is, I think, a greater measure of spiritual growth to tell someone of the pain that I've been through so that they don't have to suffer alone. Like literally giving of whatever my life has put in my toolkit in my file cabinet and saying, oh, you're not on your own. That is that's esoteric freedom, I think, for all of us, you know? Yay.
Yes, that's beautiful. To be to the power of being walked with in your journey, and just having someone hold your story, and
Mhm.
it's so powerful. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's healing, very healing. Um, I have more slides I can share. I mean, some more examples, or
Let's look at Bill Gates and then maybe we'll wrap, because this is certainly given people a little bit to think about. And I want to point out too, we were having this conversation just down here in the chat in general, is that somebody was saying, I'm coming up to a Saturn square and going to be 37. And it's like, yeah, you're good. You only became an adult at 30. If at 37 you're having an awakening, like hell yeah, you're good. You're good. Welcome.
yeah, and there's that, and Rudolf Steiner believed that you didn't stop having births. So you actually, the spirit kept growing, and there were different facets that would be born every 7 years with the Saturn square. And so you can think of this approaching square as an opportunity to be reborn again in some way, that you have your that you have your eyes set on. They and and it's so interesting. Probably won't have time to go into this, but the science backs up all of this. So every 7 years, scientists say that every cell in our body regenerates. You have no cells in your body from 7 years ago. Correlates right to Saturn. And in the first 7 years of life, there's like trillions of brain cells are grown in the brain. Trillions of brain cells develop, and then there's a steep decline after age 7, when that structure is set, and that a lot is set by age 7. Don't have time to go into a lot of that science, but it's fascinating how science can kind of back up astrology and what we can learn from science and help inform what we do.
Yeah, brilliant. So Mr.
So
Gates here. Ooh.
yeah. So okay, Moon in Aries at the top of his chart. So a natural born leader, Aries, sign of the warrior and the leader. Inventive. Aries is known to have a great imagination. Jupiter and Pluto in the second house. So he became a billionaire. The second house rules our finances. And that was kind of obvious, so we're looking for, it's like he came into the world to be a billionaire, like instantly. That was his, almost like a priori, he came in as a billionaire. But what was not as obvious from this chart is he would become a philanthropist, like an incredibly important philanthropist for the world. And what we see in his Saturn square Saturn chart, and so let's break this down. We've got Saturn in Scorpio in his birth chart, and Saturn in Aquarius, etheric Saturn in Aquarius in the 8th house. Okay, and we also have a number of planets up here in Pisces. So Gates develops quite a compassionate philosophical outlook about humanity, and founds the Gates Foundation, and that's dedicated towards world health and the improvement of the lives of those in poverty, and dedicated to solving all kinds of issues like malaria and the like. His North Node also moves into Cancer, so and the Moon in Aries remains in Aries, so founds another company and gives away tremendous amounts of money. And so we see that the square from Saturn in the 5th to Saturn in the 8th, and the 8th house representing distribution of money and benefiting humanity, Aquarius. And so while it was obvious that he would become a billionaire in his birth chart, not as obvious that he would found a huge philanthropic company and become really known for that in the second part of his life. He was called towards that. So if we look at this from an imaginative young Bill Gates at around age 7, hearing that in order to do his life, in order to save the world, or in order to, in his mind, I know he's sort of become this controversial figure now, but setting that aside, in order to do what he needed to do, first he had to make billions of dollars. So he set out to do that, and then in the second half of his life, he becomes this philanthropist. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and he'll be up here just shortly for another square.
He will be. It's interesting, and it's almost like you can feel it applying now in his life.
Yeah, whether it's the return or the square, I really feel like a year before we start to get the itchy tag feeling going, hold on, what is that? Something's happening, something's changing, something doesn't fit anymore, or really interesting. Yeah, very cool. Oh my gosh, I'm just looking to see really quickly if we have any any other questions. I don't think so, but people are saying that this just really hit and resonated with them. And I love that.
Do I have time for a wrap-up slide on this? Just to
Yes, absolutely.
orient folks? Okay. Okay. So this is, there we go. So as you're looking at this, this is the first Saturn square is something great to look at in your own charts to get a sense of direction and aim. And it can describe the, it can help you like as a meditative tool to think back on the images that you first had when you were around 7 years old, to see if those have any truth to them. Is there anything in those images that you can carry forward today in your search for becoming more and more of who you are? Probably there is. Probably there are whispers and intelligences that you knew back then that ring true today. And did you give up on your dreams? Did life get in the way? Have those dreams evolved in important ways? Those are some questions to ask. It'd be good to journal about this. This first Saturn square can give you a view into the relationship between like the body and a personal daimon, like that personal voice that's calling you forward, that a lot of us need to do some work on and attend to and cultivate and listen for. It can describe our psychological orientation to the outside world, like what we think about the world. And it's like a pathway towards vocation and your own law, your own laws that you must abide by in order to live a fulfilling life. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. This has been awesome. And I think this has been a good talk too, or as people watch it back, if you have children and they are coming into these different square times in their lives, this gives a view for them as well. And as a parent, or even in people in the community, and somebody's in that time, it gives a view of how to be supportive, right? I think, which is really, really kind of a neat thing to say, oh, okay, so, you do have your Saturn in Libra, so you're going to be trying to work on this. How can I teach you what I know about achieving this? So it really just becomes a place too, I think, where we get to see the world from perspectives that's not just all about us, and able to give to the other person to make their journey easier or more informed, maybe.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, yeah. This could be so helpful for parents, as they're raising their children, to see what's coming up. What are the stumbling blocks that my child, because every child will face stumbling blocks. So, and what are they? And how can I help? How can I especially help cultivate my child to know himself, him or her, or their self, and develop that inner relationship and creativity through play, through exposure to art, music, science, all of the things.
Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing this. This is awesome. And it's just nice to reflect too, to the squares that I've been able to experience so far and go, yeah, what did come from that? Am I using that in a way that's the most beneficial to help me get the work done?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Stormie. So it was great to be with you. It was so great to be with you. I really appreciated all of your illuminating comments, and like, it's really stimulated me to like work on this more.
Yeah, that's the thing. You give a talk and then you're like, we'll fill in right here. That's what I keep finding. Every time I give a talk, I'm like, ooh, note, I'm going to put that. That's so good.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, thank you guys so much for showing up and sharing up at this particular eat and greet today. Hopefully we gave you something that was worth the time you took to show up. I will be back at 5 p.m. with Cousin Clarissa. We will be doing the presidential candidate charts from the VA lens, vibrational astrology. So I hope to see you there. But more than anything, I just want to say thank you again so much again, Julio, for showing up. This is amazing. Just amazing.
Thank you so much, Stormie. Thanks for having me.
All right.